There is something about Noah Brown's life that most people have never heard, a part of his story that was never fully shown on television and never told in interviews, something that sits quietly in the shadows of his public image, waiting for someone to notice. On the surface, he is known as the inventive and creative member of the Alaskan Bush People family, a man who could build almost anything from scratch and survive in the most unforgiving conditions. But behind the smiles and his calm voice, there was a world of silent struggles that few could imagine. He carried a weight that did not come from chopping wood or hunting for food, but from moments in life that tested his heart far more than the wilderness ever could. People saw him on screen braving storms and building shelters, but they never saw the personal storms that shook him when the cameras were off. Every choice he made, every invention he built, and every laugh he shared seemed to have a shadow trailing behind it, a reminder of pain he never spoke of. Friends and fans noticed that his eyes sometimes held a faraway look, as if he was remembering something that still hurt, something that time had not fully healed. You could watch him working on a project with focus and skill, but there was a quiet stillness in his moments alone, the kind of stillness that comes when a person has learned to keep their deepest feelings locked away. The wild taught him how to endure the cold, but life had taught him how to endure something colder, the emptiness that comes when life takes more than it gives. It makes you wonder what moments shaped him this way, what heartbreaks taught him to smile while hiding the truth, and why he chose to carry it in silence rather than share it with the world. The truth is that Noah's silent struggles were not just moments of sadness, but parts of a longer journey, where strength did not mean feeling no pain, but moving forward in spite of it. And maybe that is why his story matters so much, because it reminds us that even the strongest people, even those who survive the wild, can be fighting a battle we cannot see. The untold story behind Noah Brown's silent struggles is not just about one man. It is about the invisible battles so many people face every day. Battles that remain hidden until someone cares enough to look closer, listen deeper, and truly see the person behind the smile. Life in the wild was never just an adventure for Noah Brown. It was a teacher, a constant test, and sometimes a cruel mirror that showed him who he really was when no one else was around. From the outside, people saw a man who could create a tool from scraps, build a shelter from fallen branches, and turn a piece of metal into something useful. But what they did not see was how that environment shaped his deepest battles. Every freezing night in the Alaskan wilderness was more than just a fight against the cold. It was a reminder of how small a person can feel in a world that does not bend to their will. The endless work of surviving, chopping wood, catching food, and protecting family was not just about keeping the body alive. It was about keeping the mind from breaking. Noah often faced days where the weather was against him, where every plan failed, and where the silence of the forest made him think about the struggles he never spoke about. The wild demanded patience, but it also gave him too much time to think, and those quiet moments often brought back memories he wished he could forget. Each task became a battle between the man he wanted to be and the man who carried so many unspoken worries. While others might see survival as a sign of strength, Noah knew that the real challenge was keeping hope alive when the world felt cold in more ways than one. There were times when he had to push his body far beyond comfort, not because the cameras wanted it, but because his family depended on it. And yet the harder he worked, the more he felt the weight of everything he carried inside. The wilderness shaped him into someone who could adapt to almost anything, but it also taught him how much pain a person can hide while still moving forward. Every sunrise over the mountains was beautiful, but for Noah, it was also a reminder that another day of struggle had begun, and he had to face it without letting anyone see the cracks. The way life in the wild shaped him was not just about skill or survival. It was about learning to live with the parts of his heart that would never fully heal. And that is a lesson far harder than learning how to light a fire or build a shelter. It makes you wonder what thoughts stayed with him during those long nights, what memories followed him into the cold, and how many times he smiled in front of others while fighting tears in private. Because in the end, survival in the wild was not his only battle. It was just the one the world could see. There is a chapter in the Alaskan Bush People's journey that many viewers never truly noticed. A chapter that quietly unfolded behind the scenes and carried pieces of Noah Brown's life that were far more personal than the show ever revealed. The cameras captured the big moments, the hunts, the builds, the challenges of living off the land, but what they missed were the smaller, quieter scenes that told a different kind of story. In those hidden moments, Noah was more than just the creative problem solver of the family. He was a man balancing the heavy weight of personal battles with the endless demands of life in the wild. While the rest of the world saw a family bound together by survival, there were times when Noah felt separated from that image, as if there was a part of himself that could not fit into the role people expected him to play. He carried thoughts he could not easily share, worries that did not match the adventurous spirit of the show, and feelings that were too deep for the quick conversations caught on film. There were days when the weather was cruel, when food was scarce, when every small mistake could mean real danger. And yet, those were not always the hardest challenges for him. The hardest challenges came from within, from the quiet battles he fought in his own mind, the moments when loneliness would creep in, even though he was surrounded by family. The wild can be both a beautiful escape and a place that magnifies everything you feel, and for Noah, it sometimes brought his private struggles into sharper focus. He had to keep building, keep smiling, keep showing strength, because that is what the family needed, and that is what the audience expected. But in the unfilmed chapters, he was still a man learning how to carry his past, his pain, and his hopes for the future all at once. These hidden parts of the Alaskan Bush People's story remind us that what we see on television is never the full truth, that behind every edited scene, there is a real person living a much more complicated life. Noah's unspoken moments were not just gaps in the show's footage, they were the spaces where his truest self lived, the parts that held the answers to why he seemed so strong, yet so distant at times. And perhaps the most heartbreaking part is knowing that those quiet chapters may never be fully told, leaving us with questions that hang in the air, wondering what Noah was really thinking and feeling when the cameras stopped rolling and the only thing left was the sound of the wind through the trees. There was a day in Noah Brown's life when everything seemed to shift, a moment that cut through the ordinary rhythm of survival in the wild and left a mark that would never fade, a day when the path ahead looked completely different from the one he had been walking. No one could have guessed from watching him on the show that something so heavy had happened, because Noah was not the kind of man to speak openly about his deepest pain, but those close to him knew that this moment had changed him in ways he could not put into words. It was not just a simple setback or a hard day of work in the wilderness. It was the kind of event that stays with you forever, the kind that makes you see life through a new lens. Before this day, he had carried his silent struggles quietly, managing them as part of the background of his life. But after it, the weight grew heavier, and the world seemed a little colder. The wilderness had always demanded strength from him, but now it demanded something more, the ability to keep moving forward while carrying a wound no one could see. Maybe it was a personal loss. Maybe it was a dream that fell apart. Maybe it was a moment when he realized that even the strongest can be broken. But whatever it was, it became a turning point that shaped how he faced everything after. The sun still rose and set over the mountains. The seasons still came and went, and the cameras still rolled. But inside, Noah was navigating a different kind of survival, one that had nothing to do with the cold or the hunger. He began to look at his surroundings differently. The wild beauty that once inspired him now also carried a quiet sadness, as if the land itself understood what he had been through. He still worked, still laughed at times, still built and created, but there was a new distance in his eyes, a faraway look that hinted at memories he would rather keep hidden. People around him might have sensed that something had changed, but they could not know the full story, and Noah never seemed ready to tell it. That day, the day everything changed, became a silent companion to him, following him through every step, reminding him of the fragility of life and the speed with which it can be altered forever. And even now, when people look back at his time on Alaskan Bush People, they might wonder if they missed the signs, if there were moments when the truth almost slipped through, because knowing that such a day existed makes you want to understand exactly what happened, what was lost, and how Noah found the strength to keep going in a world that no longer felt the same. There is something haunting about the secrets Noah Brown carried, the kind that never made it to television, the kind that stayed locked deep inside while the rest of the world only saw the version of him that smiled and kept going. These were not small secrets about daily life in the wild. They were pieces of his heart and mind that he chose to protect from the eyes of strangers, even from some of the people closest to him. Living in the wilderness meant battling storms, freezing nights, and endless hard work. But those challenges were visible. They could be filmed and shared, while his real struggles happened in silence where no camera could ever reach. Noah was a man who had learned to keep his pain to himself, partly to protect his family from worrying, and partly because he knew that some wounds are too personal to explain. Fame only made that harder, because the more people thought they knew him, the more he had to hide the parts they could never understand. There were days when his mind felt heavy, with thoughts he could not voice, when memories from his past would surface like shadows in the quiet of the night. And still, he would get up in the morning, face the cold, and do what needed to be done. Those who watched him might have mistaken his calm nature for peace, but it was a calm built from years of keeping the deepest parts of himself guarded. Sometimes you could catch a flicker of it in his expression, a moment where his eyes seemed to wander to a place far away, as if he was remembering something painful or unfinished. It makes you wonder what those secrets were, whether they were tied to personal loss, regrets, or dreams that never came true, and how much of his life in the wild was spent trying to heal from them. Noah's ability to hide his inner world was as much a survival skill as hunting or building, because in a life where every day required strength, showing too much weakness could feel dangerous. And yet, the thought that he carried such deep truths in silence makes his story even more powerful, because it shows that strength is not just about braving the elements. It is about holding yourself together when you are the only one who knows how much you are hurting. Those secrets, whatever they were, shaped him as much as the wilderness did. And perhaps they will remain hidden forever, leaving only questions in the minds of those who saw him and wondered what he was really thinking behind that steady gaze and quiet smile.